Hi there everyone, Lars here with a Deltarune character analysis brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and you might be surprised which character I'm having a look at, because it's not Susie, it's not Ralze, it's not Chris, it's not Des, it is the Titan. Yes, the Titan itself. We need to have a talk about this boss, because honestly, I don't think it's getting enough attention. And let me just say right at the onset that Toby Fox absolutely cooked with this particular encounter, because he delivered in terms of the visuals, the storytelling, the music. It all comes together beautifully to represent a monstrosity that is supposed to be kind of the pinnacle of what the heroes have to face, and also the pinnacle of the choice with which they are faced ultimately throughout the story of, can you escape your fate? Can you rewrite your story? The Titan represents everything that Deltarune has been saying in its darker undertones since the very first chapter, that your choices do not matter. No matter what you do, you cannot escape this fight. And no matter what you do during the fight, you cannot escape the Titan absolutely dominating you until something breaks. So let's start talking about this. Unbeknownst to us, the Titans have been hinted at since the beginning of Deltarune, the very moment that we enter into the Dark World, where we just see this ruined landscape with all of these eyes, dead eyes, bleeding darkness everywhere. There's a real sense of creepiness and loss and destruction. And when we look back on what we learn about the Titans and later on about Gerson and his adventures, his presumed adventures at the very least, it's very easy to suppose that Gerson himself fought these Titans once before, and that the devastated landscape that we see in the spare room back at the school was in part a result of one of those tremendous battles. Woo! That's something interesting to speculate on. We really don't have a whole lot to go on, but bear with me right here. We see all these symbols of the Titans. Of course, there's the glowing save marks that look a lot like the face mask that the Titan wears. And then, of course, in Chapter 2, we get our first real hint about the Titans with the roaring and how they accompany the end of the world, that they herald in Angel's Heaven. And of course, we are told by Ralze, do not open up another dark fountain within the Dark World, because it could lead to these Titans arriving. Now, that's an interesting little warning, because it's not followed up on in Chapter 3, but rather in Chapter 4, when the heroes face off against the Knight, and as Susie's like, ha, we've cornered you now, all we gotta do is get past you to that fountain, shut it down, and then you lose everything. And the Knight's like, fair enough, how about we up the ante? Boom! New fountain. Titan is released. And this is where the visuals come in just absolutely beautifully, because at first, the animation, let's be honest, seems a little bit like some of those edutainment games out of the late 90s, early 2000s, until the fist comes pumping on out, eyeballs open up all along its flesh, and then it begins shooting laser beams down on Chris, Suzie, and Ralze. And at that moment, everything changes, and we get the built-in lead-in music for the Titan as the team now has to climb up the pillar, climb up this fossilized fountain, and fight the Titan. But as they're doing that, the Titan is breaking free and begins to attack them with its spawn. We get a chance to see what this Titan will really do if it is allowed to run amok within the Dark World, and it begins causing that same devastation that, again, points us back to Chapter 1 of how it just tears everything down. It's ripping things apart. There's still material around. It's not like it's eliminating it where it's just pure darkness. In fact, Ralze has told us that all that basically happens if the Titans are unleashed is that everything will be consumed in darkness, and that the Lightners will just kind of be bumping around in the night with all of these horrifying things in this devastated landscape, not knowing what kind of nightmare they're surrounded around, and just their subconscious will effectively assault them from within and drive them mad. And Ralze reinforces that by saying this thing represents your fear of the dark. It is the fear of the dark. It is the thing that goes bumping in the night. It is the indescribable horror. And as it continues to grow and to build, it takes on this great angelic form. And this is where Toby captures everything, I think, beautifully with the music of this encounter. Within the Titans theme, there's a lot of very interesting elements going on, and I will admit, I am not a musician. I don't know all of the fancy names for the different notes, the different styles, or the instruments, but I can tell you what I hear and what I feel. That you have this very unrelenting, forward-going music that is actually fairly simple, but is then accompanied by a high-pitched flute that builds up the anxiety, and behind it all, you have this sound almost like heavy breathing, as if it's sucking stuff in. And we see this happen in the fight, where the Titan will suck in the darkness and then shoot out these massive bombs at the party and try to destroy them. The music complements what the Titan is, as it sucks in, it's all-consuming and all-destroying, is this relentless force. And in its more angelic form, there is kind of this higher-mindedness to some of the music, where it almost feels a little churchy in the background. And again, you have that anxiety-inducing flute that's just ripping its way through the melody. And then underneath it all, something that I find very interesting, and I could be wrong in stating this. Again, I'm no musician, but you have the bells going very quietly, not silently, but very quietly underneath it all, underneath the rage of the Titans' music. You have the bells seemingly playing out the dissonant notes of the freedom theme. And I think that that's what Toby's doing here with this. Again, if anyone's a musician who can understand this better than me, please sound off it below in the comments, because I'd love to be corrected if I'm wrong. But it sounds to me as if you get these dissonant notes of the freedom theme, as if the heroes are trying to rally, but their cause is lost in the face of this unrelenting monstrosity. This is their fate, the end of the world. One of the reasons why I actually latched on this particular element of the music comes around to an excellent video essay that I saw some years back on the music within The Return of the King, where the theme for the Shire gets shattered the moment that Frodo abandons Sam and goes with Gollum, and that the music tries to find that theme, but can only find little notes here and there. And if you're paying attention, you can catch them, but if you're just watching the scene, not really paying any attention, it's just a very heartbreaking scene with some very uncomfortable music. And this is something that music can do very, very well. It can have these little neat messages, almost subliminal messaging, within how the notes are played and where they are placed. And in many cases, the fun gang is at the end of their rope. Even when you defeat the Titan just begins recovering, going well beyond any damage you've done against it, and it just cannot be broken. It's just this unrelenting fight. And there have been long fights in Deltarune. The fight against Jevil, the fight against Neo Spamton, the fight against Queen. These are long battles that really take a toll on you as the player if you're not used to them. But with the Titans, like, don't even bother. You already know you're going to lose. And this is where the thing that I mentioned earlier breaks, where the expectation of defeat shatters the moment that Gerson arrives on the scene. The music then suddenly changes, the tone picks up, and the team is then able to go against the Titan, and they have that one final chance to win, which is when they break the mask, and Susie takes Chris and then dunks the both of them through the face of the Titan in order to seal the darkness within and close that fountain, thereby defeating the Titan. It's a bit of a long shot, but hey, it's one that we applaud because, Susie, you are the protagonist of this story. Chris, that was an awesome moment, even though we as the player control Chris, and it's a moment that confirms one of the things that Gerson has tried to impress upon Susie and on Chris, that you get to write your own story, even in the face of overwhelming odds where you should lose, where the rules say you will lose. You can rewrite your destiny. You have a choice. Now, saying all that, what does this actually mean about the Titan itself, or the Titans in general? Well, the Titans represent the dark ending that has been promised to us since the very beginning of Deltarune. That no matter what we choose, the ending of the game will be the same. No matter what we do, our fate is sealed. We will face Angel's Heaven. We will face the roaring. We are going to face these Titans. We will face the knight who ushers all of this in. This is inevitable. There is no way of stopping it. The Titan represents that darkness. It represents the inevitability of fate. The Titan also just represents the nightmares that we deal with and the nightmares that we can expect to go up against. The Titan continuously evolves during this fight, summoning all kinds of monstrosities for the team to go up against, and they continue to evolve as the fight goes on, the same as the Titan itself. And what it leaves in its wake is just absolute sheer destruction. While the Titan, according to Ralze, doesn't really have a personality or any sort of major strategy or desire, it just basically is the manifestation of your worst subconscious fears. That actually still, though, tells us a lot. Because when we look at what the dark world is, that in many cases it is a reflection and a representation of the one who has opened it, as well as the space in which they have opened it. The Titan represents everything that would wish to destroy all of the beauty in your life, that would just rip away the nuance, rip away the love, rip away all of the hard work that you have done in your life. And don't all of us strive in our lives against some Titan that's in the back of our minds, this fear that no matter what we do, we won't be good enough, this fear that our defeat is inevitable, this fear that life is against us, this fear that all that there is in the future is just darkness, defeat, sadness, loneliness. All of us have this Titan that we go up against, and that is ultimately what this thing represents. It represents the worst aspect of ourselves that we are meant to overcome. And a lot of this becomes very apparent when we think about Suzie in this fight. Suzie, who was the bully, who accepted that as basically her calling in life because there was no way that she was ever going to make friends with anyone. She's gone against that grain. She beat that negative perception of herself. And she learned that it's great to be a hero. It's great to be a friend. She has learned that Chris is going to be there for her, that Ralze is going to be there for her. She has made that known that she's not letting go of him, and he's finally beginning to reciprocate that. She is connected with a mentor, a real mentor figure in Gerson. And on top of that, she's finding her own place now within Hometown. She has a reason to go to the festival, that she is going to help out Noelle. She's going to take her to the festival and try to save this poor girl from her terrible mom. Suzie is going up against everything that in her own mind and the world around her tells her, no, you are not good enough. No, you are a loser. No, you will never amount to anything great. And that's what the Titan represents, especially to her. And so by helping Chris and Ralze to defeat it, this is Suzie really cementing the fact that she is the hero in this story. The Titan is a brilliant foil to Suzie, and not that it's an exact opposite of Suzie, which is normally what we think of in terms of character foils, but rather that it represents everything that Susie's ultimately trying to overcome, because it is the destruction of her hope and of her love and of her dreams. It represents everything that she is scared of in this weird, twisted, ever-evolving, slightly angelic form that just towers over her, that is unrelenting, that is anxiety-inducing, that evolves to match her strength. That's because our own anxiety, our own fears, our own doubts will always constantly be evolving to take us down. And so it is always a constant struggle to defeat ourselves, to become better than who we think that we are. And that's what's so incredible about this fight, about this character. Again, it's, I think, an aspect of Chapter 4 that has not been given enough attention by the fan base. And I mean, I understand that because there's so much else to talk about. Holy cow, and I hope to talk about as much of that as possible in future videos. But as I've thought about it, I've come to realize that the fight with the Titan is really significant, and it means a lot. And this is a character, or at least a type of character, that we can expect expect to come up against multiple times because of what it is. Not just within the story of the game, but what it represents. What it represents to us and to the characters, and why it must be fought repeatedly and overcome again and again, because really, it's the struggle against ourselves that really determines whether or not we are heroes or villains in our own stories. So, some interesting food for thought, and honestly, this is something that's just been brilliantly put together very subtly by Toby Fox, again, since the beginning of Chapter 1. And I'm so glad that we get to see the payoff in this fantastic fight in Chapter 4, and it sets up so much more yet to come. This matter has not been resolved, but rather it's been set up to be resolved. So the fun is just beginning. But with all of that being said, that's been my analysis, my look into the character of the Titan in Deltarune Chapter 4. What are your thoughts? And again, please correct me if I'm wrong about the music in the comments below, because I would love to be correct if that's the case, because again, I'm no musician, I'm just a writer. And with all that being said, if you'd like to support the work that I do here, please subscribe if you haven't already done so, and check out the books I've published. Links for them are in the description below. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.